But on to the news of the week. We just published a series of pieces about some internal documents we obtained from the NRA, which paint a fairly negative picture of the direction the organization is headed in. If you want to tell us a little bit about your piece.
Yeah, so things do not look good for the NRA right now. I know that's probably something we've said for a couple of years, but the big news out of the internal documents that we obtained this time around is the NRA has lost over 1 million members since corruption allegations surfaced against Wayne LaPierre and other members of NRA leadership back in 2019. 2018 was their best year ever for membership. Depends on the source you use. They had claimed 6 million at one point. Andrew Arulanundam, who's the spokesperson for the NRA, had claimed 5.5 later that year. The internal documents that we've gotten show that at least by the end of 2018, they were not at 5.5 million, but they do appear to be over 5.3 million. And this year, at the most recent board meeting last month, Wayne LaPierre, according to multiple sources that I spoke with, said that the organization now has 4.3 million members, which actually makes it the smallest it's been since 2012 when they had 4 million members.
Yeah, and no, this is a really big deal for an organization like the NRA for a couple of reasons. One is, despite some of the misconception you hear out there from particularly gun control advocates and maybe folks who don't quite understand the dynamics, is that the NRA, gets its clout from the lobbying dollars it spends, when in reality, it's because they've had millions of members that they could easily mobilize to get to the polls, to pressure politicians. So the strength of the organization, the very heart of the organization, is its membership. And to see it decline by 1 million members in just a few years is definitely a rough sign for the organization.
Yeah, it's not good at all. And of course, the other thing to keep in mind about the NRA and its membership is, as you alluded to there, the membership is what drives revenues for the NRA. That's where they actually get their money from, is from these millions of people who pay them dues or give them contributions throughout the year. And so with this loss of membership, they've also experienced a massive loss in revenue. They're down over $100 million. And, since very recently, and that has created huge holes in their budgets. Their budgeting process is another topic that we might get into because it seems rather bizarre, to put a single word on it. But they had projected to bring in far more money from membership than they did, and they projected to spend far less money on legal fees than they actually did. They spent almost 50% more on legal fees than they had planned to last year. And that's really blew this huge hole in their budget that, it was like a $44 million hole, but the shortfall between their revenue and their expenses, which they sought to cover with massive loan. Essentially, they borrowed against their line of credit to the tune of $23 million, and they still had an $11 million shortfall after that. So they're obviously not doing so well right now from a financial standpoint. It really raises the question of how long they can keep going this way.
No, that's right. Yeah. To try to patch up your revenue shortfalls with loans is definitely not a sustainable long-term solution. You sort of alluded to their budgeting thought process going forward. And they seem to project going forward that they're going to, make up some of the lost membership that they went under budget this year. And, maybe we'll see, but it's not, next year's not it's not an election year. There's not really the same drivers that you would typically see to, have drive gun rights people to an organization like the NRA. So it's definitely just, they're on a rough track in terms of how they're going to make up that revenue shortfall.
Yeah, that's what makes 2022's numbers particularly bad, because they were in a really good situation for NRA membership growth. 2022 was an election year that also saw a mass shooting, one of the worst mass shootings in history, which drove political pressure to pass a new gun control bill, which actually did happen in spite of the NRA's efforts, sort of indicating that their political power is diminished as well because of all of this. But even though you had this fight for control of Congress, you had a president in office who is committed to instituting new gun restrictions, even gun bans. The president, one of our other stories this week is that he renewed his call for an assault weapons ban during his State of the Union address, even though the day before, a new poll had shown that a majority of Americans actually oppose assault weapons bans now. Bans on, obviously, assault weapons is sort of a nebulous term, but generally they target firearms like the AR-15 or the AK-47, but usually they affect far more firearms than just those two popular examples. But you have this driving force, something that has traditionally pushed people to want to sign up for an NRA membership to show their opposition to new gun restrictions, right? That's what happened in 2018. That's why they had such a good year in 2018. You had a midterm election and you had the Parkland shooting, which led to a renewed push for new federal gun control laws. And so as a result, the NRA saw record membership at that time. But in 2022, the same sort of political atmosphere that should generate new membership, new members for the NRA, instead you saw a drop-off, and you saw a drop-off in the number of members that they were able to sign up compared to what they had planned to sign up. And you also saw a drop-off in the number of members who renewed compared to what the NRA thought they were going to see.
Yeah. And as we said before, that drove a big revenue shortfall, but it also kind of highlighted maybe some of the wisdom or lack thereof in some of their other spending priorities. You already pointed out their legal fees were way over budget, but we also discovered in a story I published, one of their line items showed that they were spending, over $1.2 million on private jet travel, which, first of all, doesn't seem like something that's very common among nonprofit organizations. But second of all, to do that when you're running $11 million deficits with a $30 million line of credit patch over that, it's just sort of a weird priorities, I think, when it comes to spending for an organization that's going through a bit of a financial rough patch.
Yeah, and it's especially troubling at the NRA because that has been one of the core criticisms that former members who no longer give to the NRA and no longer buy memberships have levied against the organization. Is that Wayne LaPierre in particular has used private jet travel extensively and without really good justification. They have said in the past that this is for security reasons. And certainly Wayne LaPierre has security concerns. I think that those are legitimate. He's been, I'm sure he gets death threats all the time. He's been swatted. There's people who would like to kill Wayne LaPierre. Like, that's the reality. But at the same time, that's true of many people in public life, including every senator, right? And I've personally seen senators flying commercial at Reagan International. That's generally how they get around. They might have security with them, but most high-profile politicians still travel commercial on airlines. Like, at a certain level, the security question can't cover every luxurious expense that the NRA undertakes. They use the same excuse for why they had to pay for, mosquito treatments at Wayne's house, or why they were going to buy him an entire mansion in Texas. This was, right. This was used repeatedly. This is why he had to go on the yacht trips from one of the contractors that does business with the NRA, that owns this giant yacht that Wayne has spent a lot of time on. That was also the excuse he gave during the bankruptcy, was that it was for security reasons. He was concerned after Sandy Hook, so he had to go on this yacht with a bunch of celebrities and rich people. And at a certain point, that security excuse starts to wear thin. And, I think the private jet travel is one of the less convincing areas where security concerns can justify what they're doing. And yeah, they're still doing it. That's the thing. Like, it's been 4 years since that those accusations first broke, Wayne had to pay back the NRA $300,000 for private jet travel where he wasn't even on the jets. It was for his family members. And of course, he got a raise to match that amount of money that he had to pay back. So he didn't really end up paying anything back to the NRA for that. But you get the idea. He admitted faults for that. And it's been a core complaint of a lot of people who stopped joining the NRA, who stopped renewing their memberships, is that they feel their money is wasted because it's going towards stuff like Wayne's luxury travel. And we don't know, of course, to caveat that these particular private jet trips that the NRA paid for last year were Wayne himself, although I'd be very surprised to find out that it was for somebody else, or at least that Wayne didn't partake. Perhaps other people also travel by private jet at the NRA, but we don't know that because the NRA wouldn't respond to our questions this time. They used to respond. They at least would give some sort of justification or plan for how they are going to make up these shortfalls. But now they've just stopped even talking about this at all.